I'm live! Oh my goodness! Hello and welcome. It's right on Con weekend. The best weekend of the whole year! Especially this year. Oy, what a mess this year has been. Oh my goodness. I had to put on a headband to put my bangs back because they're like down to here. I haven't gotten a haircut. But enough about me. We're going to talk about picture books today. Oh, wait, I have to talk about me again. Yes, Tara Lazar here. I am a picture book author. I primarily write funny stories. If you ask me to write something poetic and lyrical and beautiful, it will just turn out sappy with full of purple prose, and it will be a piece of junk. So, I write funny. You might know me for this. This is my most popular book. Why was 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. It is a series of books starring Private Eye. Yeah, oh, he's over here. The screen is backwards, so it's like I don't know which way I'm moving. So, why is 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. The next book in this series is called The Uppercase Trouble in Capital City. So, I've been writing, seriously with the intention of becoming published since late 2007, November of 2007. That's how old my blog is. You may know it. It's called taralazar.com. But I run an annual event called Story Storm in January every year, and that's to come up with picture book ideas because as a picture book author, you need a lot of ideas. And for every 30 or so ideas, you get one or two good ones, and then you need to write the story. And then, you just always need to be writing stories as a picture book writer because not every picture book you write sells. And if you want to have a couple of books come out a year, you got to write a lot. We can talk about that later too if you ask me a question about it. So my first book got a contract in 2010. When I got my agent in 2010, my agent is Amy Joan Paquette. You may just know her as Joan Paquette with Erin Murphy Literary Agency. And my first book was The Monster. It was published in 2013. And this year I'm publishing my 10th book, which is called Bloop. Yep, he's an alien that comes down to the earth and thinks the dogs are in charge because, really, think about it. Aren't the dogs in charge? Yeah, they are. We feed them, we walk them, we pick up their poop. Of course they're in charge. So, I'm going to answer every question that you have about picture books, being an author, publishing picture books. We can talk about anything you want. We can even talk about money. Okay. I will go to the first question. How do you judge a story idea to know it will resonate? Well, first thing I always do is make sure that the idea for the book has something that kids really love in it. I wrote 789 based on the joke. This is a joke that every elementary school kid knows. So I knew there was a joke if everybody knows that if I wrote the story behind the joke, that everyone would find it funny because they all know the joke. But, think about things that kids really like. Think about going to a bookstore and seeing all the titles that are face out. Robots, monster trucks, ballerinas, princesses, rabbits, Yeah, like think of things that kids really, really like. If you have a story that's written about a bunch of kids, I tend not to write about kids because they're not as interesting as monsters or aliens or bears. Like those things are really interesting to kids. And then, so that's what the book is about on its surface. But then you go deeper and you make sure the idea has some kind of resonant emotional tone for the children, like finding a friend, feeling left out, being a fish out of water. These are all losing your favorite toy. These are all things that kids can relate to. So you want something that they really like a fire truck, and something they could really relate to, not wanting to go to bed. Yes, and those things together make one solid story idea. Next question. Have you worked with one agent for all of your books? I have multiple edited PB manuscripts and I've just started the process of querying. It's all so new and I am excited for this Palooza. You will find that I use the word Palooza a lot because it is a great word. But yes, congratulations that you're ready to be querying. I am one of the rare authors who has been with one agent through their whole career so far. It's been me and Joan all the way for the last 10, almost 11 years. But that's rare. I know more authors who have had to switch agents somewhere in their career. And I know a lot of authors who have stayed with an agent that wasn't right for them for too long. So don't do that mistake either. Don't stay with somebody for too long. It just really worked out that Joan really gets my humor. She gets what I write. She likes what I write. She's able to sell what I write. So it just has worked out really well for us. But you don't know how an agent is going to work out until you start working with them. You know, some people are like, oh, my dream agent is so-and-so from so-and-so agency. Well, it could seem like you match well on paper, but you don't know until you really begin working. So don't set your sights on one person, and if you don't get that one person, be really upset. No, because there are tons of agents, and you will find somebody who gets you. Yes, I promise you will. And if you don't, switch agents. Yes, don't sit around too long with an agent who doesn't get you. Okay, next question. How do you approach editing picture books? How does this differ and or overlap with how one would edit a full-length kidlit novel? Well, I know nothing about editing a novel. Let's just get that straight right now. Editing picture books. Well, I assume that everyone here has a critique group or at least a critique partner. And they will talk to you about the certain things that you need to do in your manuscript to make it better. Now, one of the things that I find when I am writing my first draft, I do well with some of the language, but not all, because I'm really trying to get the action of the story down pat. And one of my critique partners will look at a line and say, Tara, you could do better than that. That's a boring line. And I'm like, yes, you're right. I can do better than that. A lot of what I do is try in an editing process is try to amp up my language. Because I've gotten to the point now where writing the first draft, I really have the story arc down, but I'm just trying to make the language more fun. Remember, picture books are meant to be read aloud. Yes, in voices if you have them. But I always encourage people to read a critique partner's picture book aloud so they can hear it for themselves, because when you read your own work, there are points where you have certain inflection, or let me move my light so it doesn't reflect off my glasses so much. You have a certain inflection, or you're imbuing your words with a certain meaning by the way you say them and the inflection and the meaning you give to them that may not actually be there in the words themselves. So to have somebody else read it, you catch those things and you say, oh, well, I really meant it to be sad here. And you don't sound sad at all. I'm sad that you don't sound sad. Um, good critique partners will really help you with the editing process. And don't take all the suggestions, only the ones that resonate with you. This is your book after all. It's your story. If somebody suggests something that you don't like, you can throw it out. Yes. Be your own person. Any suggestions for how to find a good critique partner? Well, this would be one of them. You're attending an event with lots of other writers. Yes, there is oh God, I forget what it is. Discord. There's a Discord channel today set the whole weekend set up for all Write On Con participants. Go and chat with other people. There is actually, I saw they were going to set up critique matching with people. Networking is a great way to find new critique partners. Join writing groups online. I have a group, that's my Story Storm Facebook group. There's like 3,000, 4,000 people there. Find a critique partner there. They don't have to be in person. I mean, nobody's in person right now. My critique group, we're all Zooming. We're Zooming. So networking is really important. I know this is a very solitary job to be a writer, but you really need other people because you need those network connections. You need people. My agent, I found her on referral. Oh, how are you going to get a referral? You got to know other writers, and somebody's going to know somebody who knows, oh, she would really like that story. Boom. And then you get a referral. So networking is very important to your career. Be sure. I know you may be an introvert. I'm an introvert. Can you believe it? Yes, I really am. But that networking is needed. Get lots of writing groups online. Go join some. Every time there's a writing, once this COVID thing is over, every time there's like a writing get together, maybe like kidlit drinks night or whatever, go meet other writers. You need them. Okay. Do you know if there is a specific format to follow on writing picture book manuscripts that are written entirely in dialogue? Can I talk to you about dialogue manuscripts? Yeah, I wrote one. I wrote a book. It was called I Thought This Was a Bear Book. It was actually my second book. Now, one thing that I didn't realize when I wrote an all dialogue picture book was that in order to get all the dialogue in, what do you need? Speech bubbles. And if you have too many speech bubbles on a page, you don't have room for illustration. Yeah. So when I wrote this book during the editing process with my editor, we had to take out a lot of speech bubbles because I had too many. And the illustrator could not fill in the illustrations and all the speech bubbles. So the story really got cut up, and I lost a lot of jokes. And, I wasn't happy with the final product. As happy as I could be, because a lot of the dialogue got cut out. So if you're going to write a dialogue only picture book, be very cognizant of your page turns and how many dialogue bubbles, speech bubbles you're going to need on a page, and make sure that they're not going to interfere with the ability to draw the picture, because that's very important. I don't have a specific format that I would suggest. I would just look at a 32-page picture book, 12 to 14 spreads, and kind of pace it out, because I think more than other picture books, you need to really work on the pacing of a dialogue picture book, because again, those dialogue bubbles are going to cover you up. Ah. All right, next question. Oh no, there's not a next question. Does somebody have another question? Let's see. Okay. Oh, wait a second. Okay, now. All right, here we go. What age would I target, or is there more than one category of picture book? Excellent question. Yes, there is more than one category of picture book. You have board books, which are for the babies, which are really from like 0 to 2, 0 to 3. The board books, those are really hard to get a contract for if you're a new writer, because they got to be super short. A lot of times they make a board book based upon a very popular book that's been in hardcover already. There has been an explosion, though, recently of, baby genius books. If you've seen them, Baby Loves Aerospace Engineering. Those are really great books, but all those books that I know are done by established authors. So you have board books. Then you have the young picture book, the hardback that is going to be for, up to 3 years old, or 2 to 5 is sometimes how they categorize the age for those, 2 to 5. I tend to write picture books for the older picture book set. So someone who's like in the 4 to 8 age range. So those are the older picture books. You got board books, young picture books, older picture books, kind of like 3 categories, I would say. Okay, next question. I'm an author and illustrator working on a PB without words. Ooh, exciting. What are your suggestions and recommendations on querying agents and editors when you don't have a manuscript? Well, as an author illustrator, you have to submit a dummy. Yeah, you have to sketch out the whole book in a dummy book. And usually they want at least one finished illustration page, and the rest can really be sketches, or not finished with color and, how the end product would look. But you're talking about a picture book dummy that you need to send around if you're an author illustrator. And that's if you're an author illustrator and you do have words or you don't have words, you still need a dummy as an author illustrator. I am not an expert on dummies, however, because I don't illustrate. So sad, I know. But so I would make contact with other author illustrators here on Right On Con weekend, or out there's going to be lots of advice for you about how to submit a dummy. Yes, you need a dummy, you need a portfolio. Oh my, you guys got a lot of work to do. All right. What are your thoughts regarding moving into traditional publishing after having self-published an award-winning picture book? I would like to take the traditional route this time, and I am a bit intimidated by the process from querying to publication. Well, yes, it is a process. You kind of bypass that process when you self-publish. And I understand that. So there's, anything can be self-published. Yeah, you're going to do the best job you can to have it edited and, illustrated and present the best product you have. But When you go to an editor at a traditional publishing company, there's going to be a lot of changes. There's going to be a lot of back and forth. They're going to make your book better. They are. That's what they're there for. Raising a picture book is kind of like raising a child. It takes a village. Uh, you know, the self-publishing title isn't necessarily going to get you further along the line as far as what everybody else has to do, and that is write a good manuscript, write another good manuscript, and another, and another, and another. Because if you want an agent, you should really have 5 manuscripts that are ready to go, because selling a picture book takes an agent just as long as a novel, and it makes less money, and not all picture books sell. So you want to have 5 ready to go. So the process of coming up with 5 may take a long time. It may take a year or 2 years or even 3. Yes, or 5. It just takes a long time. But, publishing is all about perseverance. And I know you've heard people say this a million times. If you quit, you won't be published. That's a given. But if you stick with it and work hard, I don't know anybody who's stuck with it and worked hard and hasn't been published eventually. Yes. I heard Kay Winters say this when I was just starting out in 2008. She said, I don't know anyone who has worked hard and not made it. And I say this to you now in 2021, it's true. Just continue to pump out those ideas, pump out those manuscripts. With each manuscript you write, you'll get better. I swear you will. Yes. And you'll have more that will attract an agent. And I really suggest an agent these days. There are so many traditional publishers who have closed their doors to unsolicited submissions. And if you want to get into a Simon and Schuster or a Little Brown or, oh no, does Little Brown take them? Anyway, you got to look that up. If you want to get into some of the bigger publishers, a HarperCollins, for instance, you need an agent to get you there. So keep writing. Make sure you have a lot of attractive manuscripts to attract an agent. Okay, let's see. Hi, Tara. Love participating in your recent Storytorm. Good for you. The acquisition process of manuscripts by publishers seems so shrouded in mystery. Ooh, could you shed some light on the process based on your experience and any tips you might have for establishing good working relationships with your editors after landing your book deals? Okay, so the acquisitions process at most publishers is that there's an acquisitions editor, and they're going to take your manuscript and bring it to the acquisitions meeting or the acquisitions team. And in most acquisition meetings, you have people representing all different departments at the publisher. And the most important people are really the sales and marketing people, because if they don't think your book is going to sell well, there's, they have a lot of power, these sales and marketing people. That's why I always emphasize the concept ahead of writing, because a good, fresh, unique concept is that kids are going to make a beeline towards when they see face out in the bookstore. Oh my God, this book is about robots. Film. A good concept does well in the acquisitions meetings. The acquisitions editor is going to write out a profit and loss statement. They're going to say, okay, I see this book being this size, and they'll actually have like the cost for the paper and the cost for the printing and the cost for the illustrator and how much they anticipate selling and they'll have a profit and loss statement along with, I really like this manuscript because A, B, C, whatever their list is. But you have to convince everybody at the table that this book is something you want to acquire. And so it's not just one person, one editor who's got the control, it's all of them. You got to please them all. Any tips for working with the editors was the second part of your question. Just be an agreeable person. If there's something that they want to do that doesn't really change how you think the book should be, yes. If they want to do something really horrible that you absolutely don't agree with, like one publisher wanted to give my book a horrible title and it just was so bad. And that's when you can get your agent involved if you feel like you need backup. I don't want this title because no one will ever read the book. And you could and your agent can set up a phone call and you could talk with the editor and your agent and make your case and point. And your agent is there to back you up. Yes, that's why you have an agent. But, there's been times where I haven't liked one illustration in a picture book because it wasn't displaying what I thought was a joke. So I've been, very adamant about, yes, I like this, but the joke was this, and that's why it should be something else. And there are other times when the illustrator draws something you weren't anticipating and they ask you to change a line in your manuscript. Go ahead and change it. It's fine. If you have good relationships with people, you'll have a good relationship with your editor. You will. Yeah. It's just a back and forth. And, treat your editor with respect and they'll treat you with respect. And that's really all. How many times do you edit your books? Ooh. This is a very, this question, it varies by book. Sometimes it could be like a dozen times, and sometimes it's just 5 or 6. It really depends on the book. As I've written more and more stories over the years, my first drafts have gotten better. Beginning, my first drafts are terrible. They were like 1,300 words. And like, what the heck? Ooh, didn't curse. What the heck is going on? And no, but so now these days I can get a first draft done. It's about 400 and 500 words. The whole story is there. So I'm looking to like firm up language, or is anything confusing to anybody? Does anybody not understand? Does it need the pacing, does it need to be longer here or shorter in this part? So it's like, a half dozen times maybe on average now. Yeah, Little Red Gliding Hood, which was a book I published several years ago. I did 2 edits for the editor before she acquired it. And then after she acquired it, I did 2 more edits. So I did 4 just for the publisher after I had already revised it at least a dozen times. So just when you think you're done, you're not really done. Okay. Any thoughts on historical fiction, PB? I'm working on one about the Holocaust. That is not my area of expertise, unfortunately. Let's see. Historical fiction. I love historical fiction. You have a lot of Jewish publishers, like Carbon, I think, is the biggest one. But you also have mainstream publishers like Holiday House that will also take Jewish-themed picture books. There's a group of authors called the Book Meshuggahs, and they're all Jewish authors, and they have a blog and website, and you should check them out. Maybe get some advice or some information on historical fiction, especially having to do with the Holocaust. So I think there's mainstream interest in that. And there's also the Jewish publishers, Apples and Honey Press is another one. But I haven't ever written one of those. So, look elsewhere besides me for more things like the book was Shuganas. Actually, my critique group, we call ourselves the Yentas because everybody is Jewish except one. But she almost married a rabbi. So she's, she's our honorary Jewish Yenta. Okay. Can you talk about the writer-illustrator relationship? How does it work? Do you illustrate your own picture books or just write them? I just write them. Now, the writer-illustrator relationship is very interesting because there is no relationship. The editor who has acquired your book, once they acquire your book, it sort of becomes theirs. I mean, it's still your book, but they take over they choose the illustrator with the art director. They get together and make a decision about who the illustrator should be. Sometimes they ask you for your opinions, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just say, this is your illustrator. Or they say, hey, we've got 2 guys in mind, this person or this lady over here. And do you have a preference? And you will answer them whether or not you have a preference. In most cases, I do not have a preference because they're all fabulous. Now, when they illustrate the book, you are kept separate. You do not talk to one another. No. Why is that? Because, once you get an illustrator attached to your project, it becomes their book too. It's not just your book, it's their book. So they have to bring their own creativity to the project. And they're going to draw things just based on the text that you've given. Because think about it, when a kid reads your book and they don't understand something, can they call you up and say, hey, Tara, Lazar, what did you mean by this? Well, your illustrator can't do that either. They can't call you up and say, what did you think about this? They have the manuscript. Sometimes an editor will give them your art notes and sometimes not. So they have to work with what's in front of them, and that is the text of the picture book, to bring it to life in a way that they see fit as the illustrator. So you really don't talk to one another. One case I'll tell you is that this is a series of books. So Ross McDonald and I are already friends. We text one another. We talk. Shh, don't tell anybody. So we talk occasionally, but it's not really about how he's going about illustrating the book. He just does his job, I do mine, and together they always make something pretty incredible. Your illustrator will always do something you weren't expecting. And they'll bring another layer to your picture book that you never imagined they would. One of the great examples of this is the 7 Silly Eaters by Marianne Hoberman, and it was illustrated by Marla Frazee. Now, in it is a mother who's very frustrated because all her kids want something different to eat. There's 7 silly eaters. And in the book, Marla Frazee drew the mother as being a cellist. That was her hobby. That's what she did to get a little mom time away from all these kids. That was something Marianne Hoberman did not put in the book. She did not write anywhere that the mother had a hobby and that the mother's hobby was playing the cello. But that's something delightful that Marla Frazee brought to the book to give it another layer of meaning. Yes, if they talked to one another about that, maybe the cellist wouldn't have come to be. So I think it's a good idea to keep us separate because we come up with our own ideas. the illustrator is going to come up with their own ideas. And I guarantee they will be spectacular. Yeah. Okay. Next question. How did you survive the time between writing your first PB, and finding your agent getting published? Brian Gerlain was on my website yesterday with his debut picture book. And he said something that I think is so true. He's like, in publishing, nothing happens until everything is happening. And it's happening all at once, or something like that. Go read his quote. It was very good. But yeah, nothing happens for a long time. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, everything is happening. Your editor wants to get, you haven't heard from your editor for 5 months, and then all of a sudden they want you to turn around edits in 2 days. That's what happens. So the time between writing my first picture book and finding my agent, I wrote other stories. Always be writing more stories, because if you sit around waiting, you will be waiting forever, because it just takes a long time for everything to happen. So I was writing other stories as I was also searching for my agent. It was hard. It kind of split my brain in half, because there was the business side of me and then there was the creative side of me, and they couldn't really be working at the same time. So, after I did all my research on who I wanted to query, then I would go back to writing. And then I would write for a week, and then I'd stop and I'd go back to querying for a week. It totally split. Some people can do both at the same time. I could not. But it's very important to just keep writing even when you're waiting, because you're always waiting. So if you're waiting to write again, you're waiting too long. Does that make sense? I hope so. Would you be comfortable discussing finances stuff? I'm fine with anything you'd share. Thank you. Okay. Debut picture books from a major publisher. You're going to get anywhere from 1,000 to maybe 7,000 as your first advance, unless you have a book where everybody's like, wow, it's going to sell gangbusters, it's a New York Times bestseller, and they'll give you 10,000 or 12,500 or 15,000. But usually getting to 15 to 20,000 is really the high end of a picture book, unless you're a New York Times bestseller and it's your next book in the series of the New York Times bestselling picture book. I don't think that picture book writers who are mid-list writers, which is practically all of us, I don't think we necessarily make a living from the books alone. It's school visits that kind of fill in those gaps. You can charge anywhere from, depending on the school visit, 500 to 2,000. And again, New York Times bestsellers go above that per day for a school visit. So if you're able to book a lot of school visits, that's really where you're making the money, more so than your advances and your royalties. I haven't done any school visits in a while because of COVID, but when I was doing them more regularly, that's where I think most of my income came from. So, also what's interesting is that nobody wanted me to do a school visit until I had at least 3 books out. One book, really hard to get a school visit. And I'm glad I didn't start marketing myself then, because I would have spent a lot of time and effort on marketing, and I probably wouldn't have got anywhere, because I just hear it time and time again that the schools aren't looking for somebody with just 1 book. They want somebody who's been established. They want their students who are going to buy some books after your visit to have a choice of books to potentially buy. There are all kinds of reasons for it, but really, I didn't find that anyone was interested in having me come to their school until 3 books. It's just an interesting slice of information. What kind of income does a PB writer make? For example, publishing around 2 books per year? Ooh, yeah, just, you could get 10,000 for an advance, so 2 books, that's 20,000, but especially in the time of COVID, they are splitting up when they give you that advance. My newest contract splits it in 4. Upon signing of the contract, acceptance of the final manuscript, something else, and on publication. So you're getting that advance cut into little nuggets. Yeah. And that could be over, from time of signing the contract to publication could be 3, 4, 5 years. You don't know. So that's not going to sustain you. Don't quit your day job. If you have a day job, don't quit it. Okay? Promise me you're not going to quit, because you need a steady source of income in order to be able to do this. Now, I was a stay-at-home mom, so I didn't have a steady source of income anyway. So this was only going to add to the family. So that's how I was able to do it. But, if we had to live off of my salary, that would not be good. I don't know if I could put groceries on the table. Yeah. Next question. Oh, let's get to a happy topic now. Okay, no. What is your advice for finding an agent who specializes or wants submissions of picture books? Well, there is Manuscript Wish List, MSWL. Yes, where a lot of agents will say, hey, I'm really looking for fractured fairy tales, or I'm really looking for historical fiction picture books, or I'm looking for funny books, or I'm looking for poignant books, or I'm looking for poetic picture books. So that's Manuscript Wish List. Excuse me while I get my nose. Also, you can go to the individual websites for the agents, and they will usually have a bio there and say what they are looking for. Agents aren't shy when it comes to telling you what they're looking for. So online is the best place to find that information. There's a whole website for Manuscript Wish List. There's websites for every agency. So you can do all that research online. There's also Query Tracker. Also on the SCBWI Blue Boards, sometimes they will have that information, or they'll at least have how long it takes an agent to respond. So that is helpful information, so you know whether or not you're going to, hear in 3 weeks or 3 months or maybe 3 years. No, not 3 years. I'm kidding. Do you have advice on art notes is the next question. Boy, do I have advice on art notes. I'm going to right away send you to my website, taralazar.com. There is a post that I did last year. I can't remember, where I called art notes what they really should be called to avoid all confusion. They should be called action notes. Yes. Stop thinking of them as illustrations and think of them as action. Action notes are the things that need to happen in your manuscript for the story to work, but aren't in the text itself. If there is any confusion, that's what you're trying to eliminate with action notes. That's what I call them, action notes. Trying to eliminate confusion. For instance, if you have a line that says, plop, slam, bop, what's going on? If you don't have that action note, the reader isn't going to know what that plop, zam, bop is all about. What's happening? Please tell me. I need to know. If you need to understand the story and it's not in the text, that's when you need an action note. If your text says, and the squirrel collected nuts, and you write, squirrel collects nuts, do you need that action note? No, you just said it in the text. But if it says, the squirrel was happy, and he's happy because he found a giant nut, you need to write, finds giant nut, because you didn't say it in the text. Think of art notes as action notes. I really tell you, go to my website and read that post. You could just do a search on my website for action notes and it will pop up. Next question. What are your thoughts and opinions about writing anthropomorphic animals as main characters? I was told the manuscript should be general and the illustrator will make the call as to what the main characters actually are. Well, sometimes they will make the call if it's not clear. I wrote a book called Normal Norman, and I knew Norman was an animal, but I didn't know what kind of animal, so I never specified it in the text itself. And my editor actually called me and said, Tara, what kind of animal is Norman? And I said, I don't know. Let the illustrator figure it out. And he did. It ended up being a purple orangutan, and it was perfect. He just knew what it was. But if your book, is about squirrels, then yeah, write a squirrel for God's sakes. Don't leave it if it's so general and you leave it. I don't know. Somebody might not know what it is. I don't like that advice that you were given just to leave it general. If you have a specific animal, write about that specific animal, because a specific animal has specific characteristics that is going to imbue your story with more meaning, more personality, right? Writing a story about a rabbit is different about writing a story about a lion. Yes. In the case of Normal Norman, it was an animal. I knew it was an animal. So it was general. But I wouldn't necessarily advise that you write generally. You want to write a book that's appealing to kids. And if you think kids are going to be interested in alligators, you write that alligator. Make it your decision. And then if the editor says, you know what, after reading this story, it could really be a gecko instead of an alligator. And then you could talk it over with your editor and you can figure it out. But I like anthropomorphic characters. They're fun. I mean, look, I'm wearing a Pink Panther sweater, for God's sakes. You know I like anthropomorphic characters. 5-minute warning. Oh, we're ending in 5 minutes. Okay. So feel free to tell the people to follow you. Okay, people, you can follow me. I am on Twitter at Tara Lazar, TARALAZAR. That is where I am most prolific. I also have the blog at taralazar.com. My new book is out in July, and that book is called Bloop. And Bloop, this is interesting for the last question person. Bloop is an alien who gets sent to Earth because the alien isn't doing well at school, at Emperor School. He's supposed to rule his planet. He's not doing well. So he's sent to Earth to conquer Earth first to prove himself. But when he comes to Earth, he thinks the dogs are in charge. So when Mike Bolt drew this little alien guy, he drew him to look like a pug. So the alien looks like a dog too. No wonder he thinks the dogs are in charge. There's other stuff as to why he thinks the dogs are in charge. But Yeah, so there I left it open too. I never said, this alien should look like, a labradoodle. I never said that. But it was an alien, so it kind of leaves a lot of space for the illustrator to go crazy, and it ended up being a green pug-like creature. It's very cute. So, if you could pre-order Bloop if you want, it's funny, and that would really help me out. But follow me. I give a lot of advice about picture books on Twitter, on my blog. On my blog, I'm always introducing new books that you maybe want to know about. I'm giving away books. I'm giving away critiques. I mean, if you don't follow me, you're really missing out. But I think that is, are we at the end? Yeah. Oh no, we have time left, don't we? I don't know. When you're ready, we are at time. No, she's saying we're ready. Time is up. It has been great chatting with you. I wish we had a little bit more back and forth, but we can do that on Twitter. So, follow me, Tara Lazar, and I will see you soon. And happy writing.